Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. As always, I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With us today, Vince Tolucci, Executive Director and CEO of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. A mouthful, so we'll try to say ICP moving forward. But welcome to the show, Vince.
Thank you, Lucas. Thanks for having me. And it is a mouthful. IACP is the way to go with it.
So. That's why we have acronyms. Now, there's a lot of them, and I can't really keep track, but they work most of the time. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us. Thanks for the time. Tell us a little bit about ICP, your role there, Vince, and then we'll take the time travel and tell us how you found associations in the first place.
Awesome. Again, glad to be here, Lucas. International Association of Chiefs of Police. We're the world's largest police leadership organization with about 34,000 members, and I think it's 178 countries as of today. Been around for 134 years. So we're an organization with a long, rich history. So the good part about that is we have a lot of policy positions. The bad part about that is we have a lot of policy positions. So
yeah, and by law, I assume.
A lot of constitutional stuff. But from an organizational perspective, we do the best that we can every day to serve not only our members, but the policing profession. Given what's been going on for the last decade, just in the United States regarding policing, there's no shortage of issues that we tackle from an advocacy, outreach, education, or programmatic perspective every day.
Excellent. So I noticed, going back through doing my own research, it looks like you were with ICPA. There was a short break. You've come back. So your tenure with ICPA is long, but which I want to get into with most of our conversation. But what was the initial transition here to enter this crazy world of associations?
Yeah, so I was a career DOJ employee. So I was working at the U.S. Department of Justice. Great organization, great entity, had a great role. Wasn't looking to do anything differently other than continue my public service with the U.S. DOJ. And an opportunity presented itself here at IACP. They were looking for someone that had DOJ experience, that had some interaction with the White House, and I was fortunate enough to have a detail when I was at DOJ at the White House. To stand up a new program focused on volunteers in policing post 9/11, interesting. Wasn't looking to move. I came over, had a conversation. It was intriguing to me regarding the work that IACP does or did at the time, and particularly learning a whole new area because I'd worked in the private sector, I'd worked in the public sector. I hadn't had the fortune of being exposed to the nonprofit sector. So I think the opportunity to come over to IACP to see a different part of the professional world was intriguing. The substance was interesting to me, but it wasn't the main reason that I came over. But that's how I got to IACP a long, long time ago.
Yeah. Well, if you were with DOJ, were you in Northern Virginia at the time, or you're in Alexandria now? Were you in the area?
Yep. Yeah, I was based in D.C. I worked at the National Institute of Justice. It was the research and development arm of the Justice Department. Again, great gig. But IACP offered something that I hadn't had in the quiver yet. So that's why I seized the opportunity.
Yeah, being in the area, it's hard not to just kind of trip and fall into one, as you're walking around.
Right.
In some cases, some quite literally. Well,
and again, I'd always been intrigued by associations, and ICP was enabled me to marry my two loves, my public service and criminal justice policing, to be able to do something and give back. It really was a great opportunity, and that's why I'm happy to be still sitting here after, as you mentioned, a stint elsewhere during my time at IACP.
Yeah, looking back, what are one or two big trends that have really, or aspects of the work in the association world that's kept you around instead of hopping back into another sector?
I think for me, it's our membership. And again, every association, I'm sure, Lucas, you've heard it a million times, our association's different. Our association's different. They are different in their own ways, but I think the profession that we serve matters. And for me, the passion for me has always come back to policing. I'm sure the American Bankers Association love their bakers, and the American Banking Association loves their bankers. For police chiefs, I really love what we do. The other trend that we've had that's really been intriguing to me, both professionally and personally, is the opportunity to really give in policing has been such in the focal point of American society for the last decade. It presented a lot of opportunity to really dig into policies and operations, and have those tough conversations with policymakers and police leaders about what's the best path forward. So I think between the passion for the work and the people and sort of the blank-ish slate to rethink things has been a real interest in me sticking around.
Well, before we get more granular and maybe zoom into some of those type of questions, let's stay zoomed out for a second. And what are the big things that have changed during that time? I mean, looking back, just high level.
I can honestly say, Lucas, everything's changed about this organization, from how we identify our members, how we define our members, what we provide to our members, and everything in between. Again, getting back to that blankish slate kind of concept, Ferguson in 2014, which was really a watershed moment for policing in the United States, forced us to really think and rethink about everything we do and how we do it. And as an association for a long time, I think we looked at ourselves more as, and our members looked at ourselves more as a policing organization versus an association of police leaders, which are two very different things, as you know. And I think that enabled us to really go back and look at our constitution and governance and bylaws. And again, not super happy, enjoyable stuff to dig into, but completely necessary to modernize an organization and to help us reimagine and rethink about who we are and who we want to be. Yeah.
And not a fun time, as you said. I don't know if I'd go as far as adversity, but it's certainly a change and an evolution. As a leader of that organization, how did that change you?
It's hard. So one of the benefits, and again, I could debate this until the cows come home. I've never been a sworn police officer, but I happen to help lead the world's largest association of police leaders. That distance professionally, I believe, is a good thing, because I watch my colleagues who are former police officers, and I see the board and I see our members and how it really stung much of what was going on. I didn't have the same reaction. So I think for me, the growth was the realization of what I may have had sort of early imposter syndrome, Lucas, of how did I get here? Who am I and how did I get here? To actually it being a strength to the position. So for me, creating systems that have that healthy distance, it was separate and distinct from the policy challenges that we were having, but it was an important piece. So we were managing both at the same time, modernizing the organization, still dealing with the direct and real consequences of what was happening in the United States.
Yeah. I have two teenage kids. They both play sports, and one of the things at times, maybe they'll hear this. That's okay. I'd tell them if they were here, that holds them back is their inability to take chances. Hey, I tell them both, you got to be aggressive. You got to take chances. And their response is sometimes, well, what if I miss? I said, that's okay. Everybody misses. Everybody stumbles. Can you look back and look at one of those times where either, you stumbled or you didn't take the shot?
No, you know what, Lucas, I've been saying it since I first got this job. I don't play scared. And I don't know if that's it's something from my past or my childhood. I don't know where it came from, but I never think about the personal consequences when dealing with a subject matter, right? Jalen Hurts just said it the best the other day when I heard him. When he said, I win and I learn. I win or I learn. He didn't win or lose. He wins and learns, or wins or learns, which was great. Same thing with your kids. You'll never miss the shot you don't take. So, it's that whole playing scared. And the board was good enough to give me the ball. The expectation of myself and them should be that I'm going to take it for as long and as hard as I have it.
Yeah. How about on a granular level, looking over those things, what are some things that you're kind of proud of that have changed over that time, maybe specific in the association space? So like how you manage volunteers, how you work with your board, not to feed you anything. You can come up with whatever you'd like.
Yep. Our membership has grown for 12 years running. For a spell there in the 2000s, our active members were running a little bit plateaued, if not slightly dipped. We've been able to reverse that trend. And I think we reversed that trend amidst Ferguson, George Floyd, COVID, financial crisis, civil unrest. Because Lucas, I think what we did during that time is we found our voice. Because we would talk when things were really good or when things were really bad, never in between. I think what we've done really well is articulate the value proposition to our members, right? So we're always going to have policy debates within the policing profession, and we should. Any profession should. But for us, trying to make sure that we understand and we're hearing the sense of the membership as often and as meaningful as we can, and translating that into good leads to that value proposition of being heard, but two, more importantly, doing something with it.
Yeah, I mean, really well said. First, kudos for growing for 12 years. I work with a lot of associations who've been stagnant for 12 years, as you said, and they're looking for ways to grow, and it's not always obvious, and it's never easy. But I love the idea that you all lean into, essentially the difficult conversations as it relates to whether it's policy, whether it's membership, whatever, because it can be easy to alienate, right? If you lean too hard one way or the other, you're going to impact people's businesses, lives, what have to. And so leaning in is the right direction.
And the other piece that I left out during that period of membership growth, we raised dues twice. So by any economic model, there should be a plateauing or a decrease or some sort of drop. And it didn't. It was the exact opposite, Lucas. It was the fact that we weren't just charging people for something. We were charging people for something of value. And and we just had our third dues increase in that period this year. So I'll be glad to come back and let you know, see what the progress of that is at some point. So
yeah, please do. I mean, today's the economy, right? You could just pull the inflation flag out and wave it and, no problem. In the past, it is more difficult. People become price sensitive about membership changes, but there's a lot of antiquated membership models, and there's a lot of associations who are, I'll say, scared. As you said, you don't play scared. I love that. That are scared to move the membership needle in terms of their pricing for fear that everyone's just going to run away, not realizing that you may attract a new audience because, hey, they must be doing something that must be valuable.
Yeah, and you can't just pass along the cost to the consumer every time. So for us, we tried to maintain the consistent numbers throughout COVID to make sure that we weren't doing what we can. We lost 2 conferences during COVID as well too. That was the other piece, which is, again, needless to say, from a diversification of funds perspective, that's a pretty big slice of any association's pie. But managing through that, and again, to your point, coming up with those creative membership models. The one of the big pieces, and again, governance. I could bore you to tears about governance, but one of the pieces that we did early on was we did a focus group with early to mid-career policing professionals. Brought them into IACP headquarters, had some conversations with them, and said, "What's the biggest barrier to you joining IACP today?" And their answer was the name. I'm not able to join the chiefs of police because I'm not a chief of police, because it's so specific. And so that tidbit led our board to say, okay, we really need to rethink what the membership model looks like, making more opportunities available to those who may be in early mid-career perspective, and also, sort of adopting that AARP model of not always using the long name. As we learned during the introduction, the International Association of Chiefs of Police is a lot, but sticking with that IACP brand and again trying to connect IACP with policing.
That's great. I mean, I know that there's others, maybe even sitting here listening to this, that have that same fear. Again, if we widen the net, we soften the value or lessen the lake of value, whatever metaphor we want to use. Looking back, what was your expectation to be the answer out of that question? Because I think others are probably sitting in that seat.
Yeah, again, you deal with a lot of legend and lore with any organization that's as old as we are. There's a lot of reasons. There's rules that exist with people's names next to it that aren't actually around anymore, right? So we don't know why that rule came to be. But there's a lot of belief that we don't do something because this happened in the past. Well, that we can learn from the past. We can't live in it, though. So I think getting to the point to say we need to be our own hardest critics to best assess what we can do and what we can't do. And we can't be afraid to give this a try and say, okay, yeah, we invested 6 months in a reevaluation of our membership, and it didn't net a whole lot. Okay, you either win or you learn, right? So, and how do you keep adjusting? The one thing I'll say, and I have a 48-member board of directors, Lucas. It's pretty big. It's nice board, right? But I have to tell you, the one other thing we've done with the board is we treat them as if we have an opportunity quarterly to have a think tank of policing. So, for a long time, we would bring federal official after federal official to come in and give them updates. You got really smart people that are the chief of police from San Diego to the commissioner of police in Boston to every jurisdiction in between. Let's ask them what we need to do. Let's pull from them sort of where we are. They're in these seats for a reason. Let's treat them like it. So,
absolutely. I mean, I start thinking it's sort of in the same vein of Amazon asking its customers, what do you want? Why'd you buy this? And then actually listening and reacting.
Yep, absolutely. And every chance we get to we did to that point. A couple of years ago, there was a lot going on. It was time of the Dallas officers were killed and the Baton Rouge police officers were killed. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of noise about what mattered in policing, what mattered to communities. And from that, Lucas, we went out and did a 7-city listening tour. Didn't care if there were members, non-members, just to say, what's on your mind? What's keeping you up at night regarding your department? What's keeping you up at night regarding the profession? And we went out thinking we're going to hear about guns and drugs, and what we heard about was recruitment and retention. What we heard about was issues and effects of mental health, undiagnosed drug abuse and alcohol abuse. What we heard about were the problems that they were tackling on a regular basis. And I have to tell you, Lucas, it was more than just a word cloud that came out of a report. It was really an understanding and a contextualization for us to hear directly from them, that it wasn't electronic, it wasn't, a survey. It was hearing from them directly about the issues that were important to them in their respective communities. And that was invaluable. I would say for any association executive, I don't care if your association's 5 persons big or 5,000 persons big, do that tour. Just go out, bolt onto existing events and say, hey, we're here to listen. Tell us what you think.
Well, and how else? I mean, it sounds simple on the surface, but I know that few associations are executing on such a tour, and it's just a brilliant idea. But how else? I mean, would you be the voice for people who you haven't listened to, right? I mean, it can boil down to a simple statement. That might be it.
Yeah, and we can disagree. And again, I say it all the time. I say it to our board. I say it to our staff. There's policies within this organization that I vehemently disagree with. It's not my choice it is my choice to be in this position, but it's my job to implement those. If at some point those differences are so great, I'm not going to do this job anymore. But from an association perspective, we better understand the differences that we have by listening to the people with the differences. And so it's a lot easier to have that debate when you're informed versus not. So, and again, it blunts a lot of criticism as well.
Nobody's ever convinced anybody in an argument where both of your ears are closed, right?
There's that. Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's fast forward, not to age the episode, but it's 2025. I think that's good for the context of a few questions around administration changes, policy changes, what sort of things are you all thinking about for this year in terms of, no, not policy changes, and then maybe changes or just general investments and things that you're looking at this year?
Yeah, so great questions, Lucas. So first off, the environment within policing, the District of Columbia, DC, the world of government. I say it all the time. We're an apolitical organization that navigates an inherently political environment, right? So policing's in the middle of every possible debate that you could think of. So we want to make sure we keep our finger on the pulse. That we have a seat at the table, and it doesn't matter to us who's at the head of the table. It doesn't matter to us who's convening the meeting. It matters to us that we're there and able to lend a voice to the policing leadership perspective. So we're going to continue to do that, regardless of who's in the White House or who's in charge of Capitol Hill. And again, I'm just speaking about our domestic stuff. I'm not even touching our global stuff right now. Second piece of that is the global piece. We're for a long time, the I in international was largely North America. So now we've had significant expansion, significant advancement in our membership around the globe. So those 178 countries are meaningful. We have I'm going to give you a breaking news story too. So today, we have presently 2 brick and mortar offices outside the United States, one in Abu Dhabi and one in Seoul, South Korea, with a third one, Lucas. By the time this probably airs, a third office will be opened up in Toronto, Canada. Yeah, so it's not good enough just to say the IACP. We need to be a global enterprise. And the last thing is we're gonna keep pushing and understanding what the needs of the field is, and we're just finishing up an assessment and moving towards implementation of a new certification program for police leaders, which has been the brass ring for us and others for decades. And I'm pleased to say we're on the precipice of getting it done. So a lot of work going into it. It's been an 18-month research project, and now we're finally able to talk about it. So policy stuff, global stuff, and operational stuff. That accreditation thing is going to be a big deal for us.
That's incredible. Doing big things over there, Vince. That's amazing.
It's never dull, and it remains fun, Lucas, as well. As trying as the topics are, and as trying as navigating some of the stuff can be. It's still, no day is the same ever, and I still enjoy coming to work.
Yeah, well, I love that you guys are leaning into the to the I, as you said, the international component. Too many associations will have that letter in their acronym and then represent a very, very small percentage, and really keep those members on the outskirts of the value proposition, of the initiatives, of any investment. I mean, building brick and mortars in other countries, that's walking the walk. Well done there. And I think it's just a good timing. I mean, everybody's looking to expand and this reach. And I mean, heck, even the NFL is sending more teams overseas and trying to build their presence. So why shouldn't we as association professionals do the same? Right?
No, and I think you have to. It's an overused word, but I think you have to be intentional about it too. I mean, in terms of how you go about doing it, because unless you're intentional, and we weren't initially, right? So when I first got this job, IACP, so Interpol, big global, security enterprise, 193 countries in the world. They do a general assembly, and each country caucuses, and they have their own table. For a long time, IACP would caucus with the United States. So we were doing, Lucas, everything we possibly can to say, hey, we're a U.S.-based focused organization that just happens to have an eye on the. So I'm proud to say in the last 10 years, we're sitting in the back of the room at the Interpol General Assembly with observer status where we should be the whole time.
Hey, continuing to lean in. This time we're leaning into the eye, but it's working.
Don't play scared. It's not. We didn't lose here. We just changed position. That's all.
Or you won and you learned in some cases.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
In the long run, there's always, if you don't give up, you never lost either, right?
Mantra. And it pains me to quote an Eagle because I'm not an Eagles fan, just so you know.
I thought about poking you on that a little bit. I saw you were in the green. I didn't want to go too far and assume, but that you weren't a Washington fan. But another conversation for another day.
Yes.
But I could talk about that one until we're blue in the face. But well, Vince, how about a couple of fun ones? If you weren't doing this, you seem completely all in, both feet to this organization, to this mission, to those members. If you weren't doing this, what would you be out there doing?
I'd be doing some sort of two answers to that question. I'd be either doing a reclamation project of another nonprofit organization, or I'd be a DJ. So that's two completely different things.
Okay. You have a side hustle DJing somewhere that we could see it. It's just a hobby. You've had some passion for it.
Informally, I'm a music fan of any and all types. So much so, Lucas, I'm going to divulge a secret here on this. This is two breaking news.
Okay,
stories.
Breaking news again, part two.
At our general assemblies, we have thousands of people that come to our general assembly at our annual conference. For years, I had to put up with the music that we were playing as people would come in. Now there's playlists that if you ever come, Lucas, you're more than welcome. You come in, you're gonna hear everything from Foo Fighters to the Avett Brothers to U2 to everything in between. Country, classical, whatever you want, whatever is on your playlist at home, Lucas, you're going to hear on this General Assembly playlist. That is curated by me.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I mean,
no detail too small.
If the artists you mentioned are on there, I know I'm already going to love it. I'm happy to show up. I'm also a jazz fan, which you can see back here. I go to Jazz Fest every year. Just fun fest for me. I'll be there again this year.
Good.
How about something you look forward to every year? So first event that gets on your calendar when you break out the pen and start writing stuff in, personal or professional?
Yeah, I would say let me do professional. It's our annual conference. I mean, it's where it all comes together. It's the end of a year and it's the beginning of a year. It's the touchstone for all the work that our 140 plus staff do. It's where it's realized, right? Because for the most part, we're here in Alexandria. We travel about the country and the globe and do stuff. But when you see it all come together at one place at one time, and you hear about the impact directly from our members regarding how a program saved a kid, right? Or how, doing this policy tweak saved the department or the community, from going down a wrong path. It's invaluable. So I'm a homer on this. I'm going to say our annual conference is always what I have on my calendar relative to the first circle of the year.
That's great. And then get in that playlist and gold.
Second would be the Las Vegas Raiders home opener. Don't know when that is.
Okay. Yes. Is that a regular occurrence?
Yeah, yes, unfortunately. Yeah.
Unfortunately. Well, I said the same thing about Washington for years, but we're having a moment. How about something? I feel like you've already shared, some things that maybe weren't on your resume or online, as I often ask. But what something about Vince that's not, again, on your resume, and it's hard to hide online these days. Everybody has got stuff up there, and but a fun fact we don't know.
Wow, fun fact you don't know. I'm a pretty open book, Lucas, so I'm not sure there's anything that.
Well, I learned you were a DJ already, an LA fan. I mean,
wannabe, DJ wannabe.
DJ wannabe. That's okay. In your heart, as long as you don't give up there.
Yeah. Probably the greatest joy that I have in life, and that time is now come and gone, was watching my kids play sports. So when you talked about that earlier, there's nothing that would top that, right? Whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, that's where the pride and joy comes from.
Yeah, no, I love to see them. I love to see them win and have success. It's also fun just to see them grow and face some adversity and challenges and navigate that and help them out. So I'm very much ingrained in all of that, at least for a couple more years. So I'm soaking it up while I can.
There's a lot of life lessons there for them.
Absolutely. Well, Vince, before I pull us to close here, do you have somebody in your network that you believe our audience would benefit from hearing from?
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend Justin Moore with the American Physical Therapy Association. Come to know Justin a bit over the last few months, as we are going to be moving into the building that they own soon, within the next year and some change. I have to tell you, Justin is a thoughtful leader, passionate about the work, super knowledgeable, and hands down, I would recommend him in a heartbeat to you, Lucas, to have a conversation with. I just think he'd be really a solid guest.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate the tip to the hat to Justin. We'll reach out and see if we can get him on here and learn a little bit about him and his role in the association market. And Vince, really appreciate your time. It's valuable and I know it. And so thank you for joining us and sharing a little bit.
Thanks for having me, Lucas. This was great fun. So really appreciate it.